this computer. Okay, we are recording. This is a different computer because I wanted to do a fresh install. And I did a fresh install just to test it out and kind of give you guys some pointers about installing the Java EE Eclipse for what you need for assignment number 4. My other computer had it installed already, so I figured I'd try it out on a new computer, which is what I did. And I'm kind of glad I did, so I can show you a few things about that. So let's get started. This is a Tuesday, 8:01 on June 22nd, and this is the web development class, CS355. I always like to do that just so people watching the video knows what section and what video they're watching, just in case you download it or something like that from YouTube, and then you figure out that, hey, I don't know what this is. So what you're looking at, let me put it on the student, view so it looks like your view. And I'm going to minimize this. Before I get started, I guess it's a good time to ask if there are any questions, comments, or concerns that anyone would like to raise right now. I will also break at the end of the lecture to ask for questions as well. But do we have any to start out with this morning? We all good? From my grade book, I can see that most people have turned in assignment 1 and number 2 already. So if you're still working on assignment number 1 or number 2, I would go ahead and get that done ASAP. And you should be working on assignment number 3. So let's go back to the course. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat or verbally. So I'm going to assume you guys are good, or at least to start out with. Either that or you're just waking up, one or the other. All right, so today's Tuesday, June 22nd. We are in week 4 of the class, week 4, which means we're halfway through. This is the midpoint, which means next week you have a midterm exam that is due. And today I'm going to talk about the midterm exam and what you need to study for. So this week, nothing is due except for assignment number 3, which is due at the end of the week. I would do assignment number 3 before attempting the midterm exam. And so what I'm going to do then is do half of the JSP, because there's no JSP questions. There's no Servlet questions on the midterm exam, but that also starts next week in week 5. So this week, you are supposed to be finishing up assignment number 3, which is on PHP. We talked about PHP last week. You do not need to install XAMPP. You can use any IDE that you wish. The other thing as well is there's plenty of online compilers. You don't need to have a background in MySQL either for the exam, midterm exam, or for assignment number 3. So as I mentioned last week, this video, this 5-hour PHP full course is good. Or looking at PHP 1 and PHP 2 of the PowerPoints that I gave you last week is good enough for the assignment number 3. This one here is optional. You don't need to install PHP in XAMPP, nor do you need to know how to connect a database to it. But you might find it interesting. It might be interesting, but there's no MySQL questions on the midterm exam. So just basic PHP, and I'll go over that content in a few minutes. So today I'm going to go over the contents of the midterm exam, and I'm also going to cover assignment number 4 and what you need to do for it. So without further ado, let me go back to the week 5, which is next week. Okay, so week 5, the midterm exam is due on July 4th. So most people are going, oh, July 4th, it's a holiday. It is, which is why you probably want to start early. And I'm not going to be available on Sunday, July 4th, because it's a holiday. Which means if you run into a problem while taking the exam, take it before the 4th, because what's going to end up happening is you're going to try and contact me, and you're not going to be able to reach me because I'm going to be barbecuing or celebrating the 4th of July. And you're not going to be able to get help. And plus, why are you taking a midterm exam on the 4th of July? That's kind of stupid. It's a holiday. You could take it now. You could take it this afternoon after I go over the content of it. and after you feel like you're ready for it, it's open. It's been open since day one. I've already had about 5 students already complete it. So no excuses. You shouldn't wait till Sunday, July 4th at 11 o'clock at night to take the exam and then find out that the Respondus browser doesn't work or something happens and now you need help, but you can't get help because it's a holiday. So don't do that. However, I do understand if you have to do it that way, like for example, you're traveling, there's I don't know, your schedule doesn't work out. You have until the 4th to take it. So, you can do it that way if you'd like. Also, assignment number 4 is due at the end of next week as well. So you're going to want to complete that one. So let's see, I'm going to click on this week and tell you a few things about the midterm exam. So as the description says, you need to use the Respondus lockdown browser. If you're not familiar with that, there's a link here. If you click on the link, it'll take you to the CSU eSpay version. Some of you are new, so let me explain. So this is the lockdown browser. It's an ordinary web browser. The only thing different with this particular web browser is that it doesn't allow you to surf the web while it's opened. And it opens up in full screen, and you can try it out. I can, if you've never used it before, install it and then open it up. And it's really easy. You guys are computer science students. You should be able to install a web browser. Open it up. Look at its features. You'll notice that you can't minimize the window and you can't surf the internet outside of the site that's on there. So you open it up and then you navigate back to the classroom. Once you're back to the classroom, you go into Blackboard. You will have to provide the authentication. So have your phone with you to provide the authentication. And this is a closed book, closed notes, closed internet exam, however. So you'll navigate back to week 5 of the course materials, and then you'll click on this one here that says midterm exam requires Respondus lockdown browser. When you click on that, you'll see the description that I'll go over momentarily. And when you click on begin, you'll end up with this little screen here if you're in the wrong browser. If you're in the right browser, the exam will open up and you'll be able to take it. If you end up with this thing that says enter password and little password thing here, it means you're in the wrong web browser and you can't use this web browser. This is Firefox that I'm in right now. It's not the Respondus browser. The Respondus browser will not ask you for a password. Only other browsers will. So this password protection is the first #1 key that says you're in the wrong browser. So make sure that you open up the exam in the correct browser. There will not be a prompt for a password and you'll be able to take the exam. So there's 22 multiple choice true false questions for a total of 30 points. And I'm gonna make that a little bit bigger so you can kind of sort of see it. There we go. No web camera is required, just the Respondus browser. Some professors might require a webcam, and they're basically seeing, are you searching your phone? They're watching you while you take the exam. I don't want to watch you while you're taking it. You're on the honor system. So no webcam camera is required. The exam can only be taken one time in a single sitting. So once you start the exam, you need to finish the exam. It is closed book, closed notes, closed internet, which means don't come back with pictures of your exam on your phone. That's kind of just like telling me that I should turn you in for academic dishonesty. Or don't tell me, oh, on the internet, on Wikipedia, it says blah, blah, blah. Again, that's grounds for plagiarism. Don't cheat yourself out of a good grade by cheating. And that's going to be, if I've discovered that you have Googled something while you're taking the exam, you wrote something verbatim from a website that's on the internet. Yes, there's a plagiarism check that we'll go through. It's not Turnitin, it's a different one that we'll check to see if your answers match things on the internet. However, this is not a short answer. This is multiple choice. And so multiple choice is a little bit harder to cheat with because, There's no website you're going to be able to find it on. Okay. So if you don't finish the exam within 1 hour, and there's only a 1 hour time on this exam, the exam will terminate and it will close and you will not be able to retake it. So you have 1 hour to answer 22 questions. So you gotta, it's pretty good. No one has ever not answered it within 1 hour. So 22 multiple choice and true false questions. The total exam is worth 30 points each, 30 points total. So some of the questions are worth 1 point. Some of them are worth 2. I believe a 2 is the highest actually on the exam. And it's pretty straightforward. All the questions are straightforward. You should not have any issues if you know the material. So what kind of material do you need to know? So let me stop this share for a moment and I will put some in the chat here. Okay, so midterm exam covers HTML. That's a no-brainer. So you'll have some questions about HTML. You will also have some questions about CSS. You will also have some questions about JavaScript. And you will also have some questions about PHP. The midterm exam does not cover JSP or servlets. We are starting that this week, so you're not responsible for knowing anything about JSP or anything about servlets. Okay, let's talk about HTML. You want to know what HTML stands for. You also want to know the common tags. So common tags would be the tags that I have shown you in a lecture or that you have used in an assignment. For example, common tags would be like P. Oops, I can do that right. P. Maybe the table tag. Common tags. We want to know how they're used, the opening and the closing tag. Now, I am not going to pick some obscure tag, and it's multiple choice. So you'll see something, for example, which of the following tag is used for blah, 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 blah. Actually, let me give you one. Which of the following tags is used to make the text underlined? And you'll see an option that'll have a U on it. And you'll go, oh, that's the one. And you'll click that one. And then maybe there'll be one in here that says P. And you go, oh, that's for a new paragraph. Or BR for line break. I'm not going to hit you up on the closing tags with just the slash or the new iframe parameters and stuff. Nothing like that. The basic HTML tags, you want to have a grasp of what these HTML tags do. You also want to be familiar with the concept of the form and the elements in the form, because you used a form in assignment number 2. So the way that you study for this exam is you do assignment number 1, you do assignment number 2, and you do assignment number 3. If you've done all 3 assignments, you have all of the content for the midterm exam. Assignment number 2 required you to do a form. So be familiar with how do you do an input with the text. So what's a form? How do you do it? What's the action on the form? What methods are available? How does this thing work? So look at the form before you take the midterm exam. Okay, now when it comes to CSS, you didn't have to do anything. I just showed you we did a lecture on CSS. You learned about the properties. You learned about what it does. It's more theoretical questions on CSS. And the CSS, you want to be familiar with the concept of the style and CSS as used in websites. This means, remember we put the CSS tags in an external, we put it in the head of the body section, we put it in line. So we have external, internal, inline kind of formats and how you use CSS. I'm not gonna have you create, well, you don't have to do any programming. There's no programming that you are required to do on the midterm exam. So there's no programming. Instead, you're gonna look at code and tell me what it does. So you'll have to look at a CSS tag. You'll have to look at HTML tags. And the question might ask you, blah, 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 blah is an example of A, B, C, D. Or something like CSS, this CSS code does the following, A, B, or C. So, what does the CSS code do? What does the HTML code do? And it's basic stuff that I have shown you in the class lecture. So they have the mystyle.css you can take a look at if you've never used it before, because you were not required to program with CSS in your assignments. However, as you probably remember, I mentioned it's not a bad idea to practice with it. Most likely as a developer, you're probably not going to write any CSS. Somebody else as a designer, unless you get into design, a designer might put one CSS file together for you and then use the file. You'll be using the file, the external file, and calling those tags or calling those elements. But you want to be familiar with basic CSS. So there's some questions about CSS as well. You're also going to have some questions about PHP, JavaScript, but actually, do you have any JavaScript questions? I'm looking at the exam now on another computer. And you know what? Oh, I'm actually not seeing PHP. Oh, yeah, I do. Okay, I do see some. There are one or two on JavaScript where you're going to be given some JavaScript code, and then you'll be out. In fact, I'll give you the questions right now. There's two formats. One question says, what will be the output of the following JavaScript code? A, B, C, and then you're given the JavaScript code. And then the other question is, what will be the output of the following PHP code? So you're given some PHP code, and you are given some JavaScript code, and you look at the code, and you have to answer A, B, or C. There's up to four, A, B, C, or D, where you'll answer, what does this code do? Be sure to read all of the answers. Some of the answers will say all of these selections, none of these selections. And so you don't want to go, oh, this is the only one that makes sense. And oh, wait a minute, the bottom, it says none. So, make sure you don't stab yourself in the back by not reading all of the answers to the questions. There is only one correct answer per each question. But as you read further through the questions, you're going to see some of them are slight variations of each other in terms of the answers. So you want to make sure you do spend some time looking at the answers to pick the best answer. So there's only one correct answer for each question. So there are 22 questions. You will also get different questions than your fellow classmates. So the code sections are different, the answers are different, and the questions will be randomly selected for you. So there's a base of about 50 questions. You'll get 22 of them in combination to equal 30 points. But you're not going to get the same questions as your other students will get. So in that particular scenario, it's not going to help if two of you take the exam at the same time, sitting next to each other, going through, and it's not a group activity. So you're probably going to screw yourselves up by doing it that way, because you're not going to get the same questions, and so you'll be spending too much time going back and forth trying to help each other that you're going to run out of your 1 hour, essentially. It is a time. That's why it's timed to discourage you from cheating, essentially. But 22 questions in, that's like more than 2 minutes a question. So, that's a lot of time. And so you won't be able to run the code and, you'll be able to look at the code, but you can't run the code while you're looking at the question. So don't plan on doing that. If you do try to do something like that, your browser will lock on you and you will not be able to finish the exam. So I have a lot of students who do try to cheat, who will try to open up a web browser. As soon as you do something that goes outside of the browser and the browser detects some internet activity that's not in the browser will lock on you. And then you're going to have to embarrassingly call me up on the phone or send me an email message and say, oh, my browser locked. And I'll look at the log to see what happened. And the log will tell me if you navigated on the internet while taking the exam. And if you have, you cannot retake it. It's not possible. So don't cheat yourself out by cheating, essentially. So the other thing I will say on this as well is that there are some legitimate problems. And, occasionally students do have problems. And let me tell you what the problems might be. The problems might be that maybe you don't have a good internet connection. It is possible. And if you don't have a good internet connection, your browser might lock up on you. That's a legitimate problem. If you do have a legitimate problem, please do contact me. You're probably not going to catch me real time. Unless you're extremely lucky. Most likely you'll have to send me an email message and say, hey, I was taking the exam and all of a sudden it just locked up on me, or I opened up the exam and it locked up on me. It probably means you have something running in the background on your computer, like instant messaging or something. That's what causes it to lock. So if it does lock, you're not going to be able to get back in, which means you're going to have to call me up. I'm going to have to look at the log to see what you had running, because the log will tell me what you had running. And then I will advise you to shut down your iMessage or shut down your Zoom or shut down whatever it is you have open. So if you want to avoid problems, lock your computer down, which means shut everything off except for the Respondus browser. Turn off iMessage, close your iMessage, close your web browser, your other web browsers like Firefox or Chrome. Close down Zoom. Look at to see what's running in the background. Close Zoom down, close Skype down, close all those things down, because the Respondus browser will not run correctly with these applications running in the background. Okay, I don't know how much more clear I can make this. I don't want to lecture you, all day on this. I'm just trying to tell you, you can make it your life easy by just shutting everything down before you take it. Otherwise, you're going to end up having to send me a message or, better, and I'm going to, catch it about 5 or 6 hours after you already tried it and say, hey, you know what? The log shows you had Skype open. You should shut that down and try it again. And then I'll have to reset it for you. So the good thing is that the browser will lock initially, and I can tell how long you've looked at the exam, or if you have looked at the exam before it locks. So, and then I'll reset it for you if it's a true, honest problem. So, unfortunately, during the pandemic, we had to go through all these drills and stuff. And fortunately, I guess in the fall we're done, which is cool. So we won't have to worry about this stuff going forward. All right, so I'm gonna actually go back. I had Firefox open. Oh, I did. Okay, good. So I'm gonna cancel this screen. Before I continue, that actually is my entire midterm exam review. That's the only thing I can actually tell you is that, no HTML, no CSS, no JavaScript, and no PHP. And the level of PHP that you need to know and the level of JavaScript, and it's by the assignments. So if we did it, like, for example, the PHP, you're writing some PHP code to do an active password checker. If you haven't done that assignment, you might not actually know what PHP code looks like. So do the PHP assignment before you take that exam. The exam is not due at the end of this week. The exam is due at the end of next week, which happens to be the 4th of July week, but I'm giving it to you. And the information early is because some of you might want to take it earlier instead of taking it on the 4th of July. That's not my preference. So you have 2 weeks, this week and next week, to take it. It cannot be taken after Sunday, July 4th. You'll get a 0 on the exam if you don't take it before the 4th. So be familiar. And the level of familiarity is not at the expert, it's at the noob level. It's at the level that you have from doing the assignments, which I guess is a little above. It's more of an intro to intermediate level. But no, I'm not going to ask you how to do objects. You didn't do objects, and you didn't do object-oriented PHP in the assignment number 3. If you didn't do it in the assignment, you're not responsible for knowing it. And again, going back to what I said about PHP, you don't have to know how it works with MySQL either. We didn't do a PHP MySQL assignment in this class. Occasionally I throw one in, but I gave you guys a break because this is the summer term and we have such a short 8-week. I gave you a little bit of break on that, and your assignment is to do the password checker that doesn't require MySQL. You can certainly play around with it and it might help you, but there's no questions about MySQL on the midterm exam. So I'm going to briefly break for a second. Do we have midterm exam questions before I continue to JSP? If we don't, I'm going to continue. Thank you, Christopher. It's pretty straightforward. In fact, you should get 25 to 30. I rarely have had anyone, unless you just like were in a dazed and confused kind of state. I don't have anyone who really scores less than 25 on that exam. I don't know. The average is usually between 25 and 30 points. It's common to miss 1 or 2 questions because maybe your familiarity is not so good. And it may also be that some students have test anxiety and stuff like that too. So don't kill yourself. Don't shoot yourself in the foot if you score less than 25. But if you do have testing, 25, probably the worst you could probably do on it, 24, 25, which I believe, it's a passing grade, so it's not so bad. The final exam will require, actually I haven't written the final. Well, the final's out there. I did write it. The final exam is similar format. It's a little bit harder though. It's 35 points, but let's wait for the final. And the final is available, but I don't think, no one's taken it yet, and I wouldn't take it yet until you get through the JSP. Okay, so let's talk about JSP. And I promise today, actually, we're not gonna go so much today. Oops, I don't want that discussion board. I keep saying it, but this week is the week, I think. I don't know. All right, so week 6, which is, yes. Wait a minute. Welcome to week 6, and I got week 7 here. That's not good. Well, I think it's just me. 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, that's my typo. So let's see. That's a typo. Here, actually. I'll fix that typo. This is week 6. Week 6, we have assignment number 5, which I'm going to go over today. And then it's introducing assignment number 6. So assignment number 5, the one I'm going to bring up right now, is due on July 11th. So this week, which is week 4, assignment number 3 is due. And during week 5, assignment number 4 is due. So assignment number 4. So assignment number 4 is the one I'm going to go over now. So let's stop with this share. I'll fix that wording a little bit there. I don't know why I did that. Let's see. Assignment number 4. Let's go take a look at it. Assignment number 4. Here we go. Okay, assignment number 4 is on JSP and Servlets. So these exercises listed below are intended to provide you with an instructive way to get used to servlets and JSP. You're going to complete all 3 assignments. Okay, a little bit of warning. I'm not going to do it for you in class, but I am going to demo JSP and servlets, and I'm going to go through how to install it during this class meeting. Next week, we'll play around with servlets because we are far ahead on this. This assignment is not due until July 11th. So you have a few, this assignment number 4 is due on July 4th, So you have 2 weeks on this assignment. You have this week and then you have next week. So let's see. You're going to write a simple JSP page that prints out a series of consecutive numbers by using a Java loop construction. The output could be, for example, and I'll write a loop in Java for you. Maybe I'll try and do that for you. Then you're going to modify your first JSP page in 1A, that's this one, so that it prints out a series of numbers given, so it changes and prints this out. So you're just going to change the loop logic. And then you're going to modify the page that you wrote there. So it prints out each line. You can put all of this in one page if you'd like. So you can put it all of these things you can stick in one JSP page. So you don't have to write like, I have had students do like 1A, B, C, and D, yikes, in like 3 or 4 different files. So you can put it all in 4 different JSP files or whatever, or you can put it all in one. I would just put it in one. In order to make the list printed out in the previous page a little bit easier to read, you're going to change the font. So you're going to add some HTML code to it. So you're going to write JSP code, which we're going to look at momentarily. And then you're going to write some HTML code with it. And then for part 2, exercise 2, you're going to experiment here. So you're going to write a JSP page, which presents 75 random integers in a table. And you're going to have trial 1, trial 2, trial 3. And then you're going to implement 2A as a servlet. So you're going to write a JSP page, and then you're going to convert it to a servlet, which you're going to use the same code, you're just going to run it differently. And then you're going to modify it as servlets to keep random behaviors per each new session. So this is really a kind of a, don't attempt the servlet stuff yet. And then you're going to respond to the user request. So you're going to write a form in JSP. So you're going to put together the 2 parts. You're going to create a JSP that calls a servlet or that calls another JSP file. And this will be and you can read through the details on your own. It's just going to do random number generation and show you the output. But let me show you something before you start freaking out here. I'm going to go back to the Blackboard class. Oops, what did I do with the Blackboard class? Hold on one second. Make sure that that's still up. Here it is. Yeah, I like my big computer better. Okay, so if you look in the week 5, you're going to see at the bottom of the screen, CS401, assignment 6 help. This assignment goes through
Hello, everybody.
this. I did this back in the beginning of the pandemic when I gave this assignment out. And it shows you everything. So this is supplementary to what I'm going to do for you today. But this video shows you using, it's about 6 months old. So it's not that old. It's labeled assignment number 6 in here, but it's not assignment number 6. It was used for a different class. But the video I felt was good. And the video was definitely worth giving you access to. It's going to go through the entire assignment for you, showing you step by step. It's about 28 minutes long. The code for this video, and let me bring this up here, is at borg.csusp. There it is right here. So I put the video in the URL line, excuse me, the link. So it's borg.csusp.edu /tilde And what you've got here is a directory in here. I'm going to make that a little bit bigger for you. CS351. And then you see examples. And so I wanted to point this resource out to you as well. If you go into the JSP examples, here's the JSP. You'll see in here, the video will tell you where the stuff is. This is the directory you're going to use. So there's a calculator, there's a calculator.jsp, there's a first, there's a hello world. The video talks about, there's a little tic-tac-toe game in here. These examples are worth looking at. because they're going to show you, oh, here's an interesting solution file. Well, this is good. Yeah. Actually, you might want to take a look at this kind of tutorial thing as well. They're great resources to show you basically how to write JSP code. Okay, so JSP code requires Java programming. And there's no assumption that you guys have had any Java programming. And so I'm going to show you kind of C++ style Java programming, which is essentially JSP. So the JSP code that you're writing is in core Java, but the Java code you're writing is very C++ like. You're not going to create a class. You're not going to do an inheritance. You don't actually have to know Java. All you have to know is basic C++ or C, actually basic C code. We're not working with object orientation in this class, and we're not learning Java in this class. However, you can translate your C programming knowledge to write Java code, because it doesn't really require that much exposure. And I will be showing that to you momentarily. So the other thing that you might find helpful are the lecture notes. These are more PowerPoints than anything else. Some of them are in the class, some of them are not, but like servlets, you don't have to look at Perl. I tried to label them. We have some, this is where the PHP 1 and PHP 2 are that I've been using. Here's the JSP one that I put in the course materials next to the video. So this is another great repository of lecture notes as well as examples. And all of these examples work. And the examples in particular that, oops, I guess I used the same, didn't I? I used the same, oh, there we go. Yeah, there we go, we're back. The examples in this video are the ones that are used down here. So this assignment is your assignment, even though it's labeled differently. And the examples here are located at that location I just gave you at Borg CSUD space. So this might send you to the 401 class in the video. Just know that the URL for the examples are different. Actually, let's see what this one takes you to. Oh, this one takes you to 401 examples from the previous class. But that's okay, it still works. So you can click on this link here and go to the examples as well. So that I just thought I'd put them in a couple of different places just in case you were interested in looking at the other examples as well. So these examples in that video is in the week 5 course materials. If I go to week 6, we have moved on to assignment number 5. Number 5 is going to be on the servlets and the do get and the do post on the servlets. I'm not going to go through servlets today. Next week, I will go through servlets. And so we will have a class meeting, even though it's the midterm week. We will still have a class meeting during week 6. Actually, that might be, I will have to give you a heads up on that one. I might be out of town that week. Nope, I'm sorry. That week is the week, next week is not that week I'm out of town. Next week we will be going, I'll be going over the servlets. The week right after, this week here, week 6, just as an FYI, I will send out an announcement, but I have a potential mini vacation I'll be going on the week of week 6 of the class, and we may not have a Zoom meeting during week 6. And so I will keep you informed on that next week, which still 2 weeks. It'll be after the midterm week. You guys will be recovering from the midterm and you'll be working on assignment number 5. And then we will look at number 6, which will just be an extension of number 5. And then we look at some Java Beans and some JDBC, and then we're done with the course essentially. So we are at the halfway point today, this week, and we are slowly getting to, you know, for half done already. We're definitely coming around the other side. All right. So let me bring up a web browser. Actually, let me just bring up Firefox, actually. Hold on one moment. I'll slip into Google. And stop me, or holler if you guys have questions. I'm going to assume you guys are okay as I talk through this. All right, so what do we need for the next assignment? All right, so to do JSP, you're going to need you're going to need three things. I would start in first by downloading Java. And to do that, you're just going to type in download Java. And you want the JDK. So let me show you real quick what you want. So if you go to the Java SE downloads, you want this one here, the JDK download. It doesn't matter what version of Java you have. In fact, you might already have Java on your computer, depending upon which classes you've taken. If you've done the 401 class, you definitely have Java on your computer. If you've taken a Java course in the past, if you have a version of Java, leave it alone. It doesn't matter what version of Java you have. It works with the SE. So EE, which stands for Enterprise Environment or Enterprise Edition, works with the Java SE. We will not have to use the Java EE version for web development. So the Java SE, you want the JDK, Java Development Kit. Doesn't matter which version you get, but you're going to need that installed. So if you have an older version of it, go for it. That will work just fine. As long as it's not like 10 years old. I mean, it's got to be current. In fact, let's just see what I got on my computer here. And there's a test you can do to see if you have it. And I'm going to open up Terminal real quick here. Stop the share, start to share, go to Terminal. You want both. So if you type in Java, you want that to show up, which means I'm not running anything. I just opened up a terminal screen and I typed in Java and then type in Java C. If you type in Java C here, then you should get a bunch of, a help for the command line arguments. I typed in Java C. If it gives a bad command or file name, this is on like a DOS prompt in Windows or a terminal window on a Mac. I happen to be on a Mac. But if you get like a bad command or file name when you type in Java C, it means you don't have Java in your path and you don't have it installed, or you don't have it installed. So you have to install Java if you've never used it before, and then stick the Java bin folder in your path in your environment variables. And just go to YouTube, and if you don't have Java, just go to YouTube and go in YouTube to say, how do you install Java? You guys are CS majors, so I'm going to assume you can install Java. Okay, so I just ran it at a command prompt just to ensure that I had it, and that's in the environment, and that it's accessible. Okay, so now the next thing I'm going to do, and what you want to do, then I would just do install Apache. So go install Apache. Tomcat. So you want a Tomcat setup, Apache Tomcat. And so I have 6 on my computer. This one's got 8. You can use 6, 7, or 8. I am on Mojave, which is, I don't know why I did it. I don't know why I did a 6, but 6, 7, or 8 works. You don't go any lower than 6 though. And so how did I get here? This is the tomcat.apache.org. And Tomcat is a extremely easy install. You download it. And so here I have, let's see. I want to go to downloads, which actually here, let's just go back here. I'm going to do something else here. Download Apache Tomcat. Let's just go 6 here. I know 6 works. Spell download. Wow, I can get it here. Let's just take out the 6. So this is the software downloads. Yeah. All right, here we go. This is what I was looking for. All right, so on the downloads, this one looks like it's 8, which is okay. So you can come down to the bottom here. I'm on a Mac, and I did the core. So you want the core. You don't need the full documentation. You don't need the deployer, the extras, or the embedded. The core sounds like, would give you the impression that it was like a lot, but it's actually the stripped down version. Just the core features is what you need. So if you're on a Windows machine, you want to pick the 32 or the 64-bit Windows. If you're on a Linux or a Mac, you're going to do the zip or the tar. I would just do the zip. If you download the Apache Tomcat zip, it's going to save it to your local disk. And then what you're going to do with that is just drag it over and stick it. If you're on a Mac, I would stick it in the applications folder. And let me show you that real quick. Let's see. Stop that share. Start this share. So there's my Apache. So when I download it, the zip file, I get a folder. And the folder, and my folder is labeled Apache Tomcat 9.0. Oh, I did 9. Oh, well, okay. So I did 9. So go ahead and do 9. 9 works then as well. My other computer had 6 on it, so it tells you how old it was. So yeah, I did 9, which happens to be the latest and the greatest. So Apache Tomcat 9.0.48 or 9.0. something or other. So if you open the folder, there's a bunch of stuff in here. You don't have to worry about it. Just drag, if you're on a Mac, drag it over, stick it in the applications folder or stick it in your home folder. If you're on a Windows computer, stick it somewhere on your C drive. Don't run it from your desktop because you need to keep the folder. And so do not leave it on the desktop. Put it, because you're inevitably going to delete it from the desktop. And then when you delete it, you're not going to be able to use it and you're going to run into a problem. Okay. So once you have the Apache running, or excuse me, installed, and how do you know it's installed? Well, you're going to download it, you're going to unzip it, you're going to drag it over to your folders. There's also a video on this, by the way, that you can watch. It's in the course materials, but you can also find many videos of this on YouTube. So the last thing you need to do is you're going to need to download Eclipse for web development. So you're going to go to the Eclipse. It used to be called the EE version. So you'll see in here it says the Eclipse IDE for Java EE developers. This is old. So the package release, 2014, a newer package is here. So if I click here, they relabeled it. They still call it Enterprise, but what you want is the Eclipse IDE for Enterprise Java and web developers. That's the one you want. And you see on the right-hand side over here where I'm hovering my mouse, just download the x86 64-bit if you're on a Mac, or the x86 64-bit if you're on a Windows machine. And it's going to create another folder on your desktop. If you're on a Mac, it's going to actually just give you the executable file. Actually, it does the same thing on a Windows. It's practically identical. You get a little icon, and the little icon looks like this. So what you want to do is just drag the icon. Here it is right here. Drag the icon and stick it in your applications folder. Or better yet, drag your, install it on a Windows computer. You're going to get a little icon that looks like that. It's like a green little icon. So you double click on the icon and it's going to open up for you. So let's see if I have Eclipse actually opened. And then I will talk about Eclipse a little bit. Let's just leave that one alone. Let's see. Eclipse, I got Eclipse. All right, so I took the liberty of opening up my Eclipse to test it out to make sure everything was still working. And so my Eclipse looks like Eclipse is Eclipse. If you have a version of Eclipse already that maybe you used for C++ or for PHP or something, you're going to want to get this version of it because the templates are going to be different. The templates for the new projects. You want to be able to create a web project. Okay, so you're gonna get like a little screen that you're gonna hit, and I still haven't stripped mine out all the way. I started stripping it out when I installed it. I usually get rid of all the buttons and stuff. My view might look a little cleaner than yours. You might not see, it might be black. I mean, I don't have a dark mode enabled on this one. And you're not gonna have anything over here to start out with. So what I want to do is kind of create like a hello world project for you and kind of run you through what this looks like. So I'm going to go to file and I'm going to go to new. And so for the purposes of this class, both projects that you're going to do for assignment number 4 and also assignment number 5 and 6 and whatever is going to use what's called the dynamic web project. So once you have Java installed, go and make sure you can type in Java C from a command prompt and make sure that you get that little message, which means and you don't get a file not found. If you do that, you got to fix your Java first. Second, make sure you've dragged over and you have Apache installed. And the install is nothing. You just download it, you unzip the file, and you stick it in your folder somewhere. You stick it on your hard drive somewhere. Number 3, you install Eclipse. You go to the website, you download the web developer version of Eclipse, you unzip the file, you drag it over to your folder somewhere, or you stick it in the applications folder. There's a video on it that I put in the course materials. There's also a ton of videos on this on YouTube. You guys are CS students, you should be able to figure it out. Okay. Then you open up Eclipse, and then you always select Dynamic Web Project. If you select Dynamic Web Project, you get a nice little screen that shows up here. All right, and so I'm just gonna run through the template because I want to make sure you do this correctly. Okay, so I'm gonna create Hello World. Hello World, and of course you cannot put spaces in the Hello World. I mean, the name of the project can't be space. Okay, your target runtime right now is gonna be empty. It's going to be empty because you have never run it before. So if you click on that, you're going to need to select the runtime. So if you select the runtime, you should see a little drop down. So if you click new runtime, for example, you can go, 6 is the lowest you can go. I guess there's a 10. I did a 9. You can do a 10 if you have 10. And so it'll create the local server. If you go next, it'll ask you where is it located? Where is your Tomcat located? So I selected 10, but I don't actually have it. So let me go back for a second here and pick 9. So I
don't think we're able to see what you're doing.
Oh, thank you for letting me know. Let me see if I can share that screen because that's an important. Let me show you. So I have to back up. Is that what this is? The dialog boxes weren't showing up. Okay, let me fix that. Thank you, people. That's what you guys have to tell me. Otherwise, I'm assuming you guys can see it. So I'm going to stop the share and see if I can get that dialog box to show.
The only thing that showed up was it saying Apache 9.0 and none. And
can you guys see it now?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to I can't cancel. Let's see if I can go back. So cancel. Oh, hold on a second. I'm going to get it. I'm going to go back. Here we go. Let's see. I got it now. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Otherwise, I'm going to assume you guys can see it. All right. So I created a new web project, new dynamic web project. Wow. Okay. New dynamic web project. So for the project name, I'm putting in Hello World. This is where I was navigated to. This is what I was working on. Okay, so this is going to be empty. Where it says target runtime, if it's the first time you set this up, this little box is going to be empty. Right now it says Apache Tomcat 9.0. So instead, if it's empty, I'm going to go to the right-hand side where it says new runtime, click on new runtime. And then this is, I have to stop the share. Let's share it again. Hold on one second. Okay, there we go. So in the new runtime, I've noticed now it goes from 6. Wow, it goes from 3. I don't know if I would use anything below 6. If you have 9 is good. So if you select the version that you've downloaded, now it's only going to show you the major version, not the minor. So you don't have to create the local server. You can just click right there and then click on next. And so this would be a number 2 because I already have one already loaded. I already created one. So this is number 2. You would need to browse to the folder where you, and I put it in applications. You would need to browse to the folder where you downloaded your Apache and where you dragged the folder to. I put it in applications. So you connect the Apache Tomcat version to the folder where you have it installed. And then leave the Workbench default JRE there. And then you click on finish. But I already have one and I don't really need 2. So I'm going to cancel this here. But you need to set, the first time you create the project is when you need to set up the server. And then once you set up the server and you click finish, it takes you back to the screen. And so the screen should now show Apache Tomcat 9 or whatever you have. Leave the dynamic module version, leave the configuration, leave all that stuff alone because you don't really need it, but click on next. And you'll see the source with the main Java build path. Leave all that stuff alone and click on next. But you do want to click on the last screen where it says generate web XML deployment descriptor. You want that. So click on that little button there. If you do that, then you'll have no problems at all and you won't have to configure anything. If you don't click on that, you'll have to manually create a web XML deployment descriptor that you may or may not necessarily want. So when you click on finish, it'll take a few minutes. On the bottom of the screen is the installing the dynamic web module facet. So yes, it will take, and I have, I believe I have 8 gigs of RAM on this computer. It's not the fastest process, and a lot of people think, oh, it's failing, but it doesn't fail. Instead, it takes you back, and you'll see 2 now. This is what I sampled before, but this is the one I just created, which was Hello World. And then you'll see another one that says servers. And in the server is where you see the Tomcat 9 server at localhost config. Leave those alone. Never delete the servers because now you can reuse the servers. And you might see on the bottom some other open tabs, and you're not going to have this server tab here. This one stopped. You're not going to have it initially because it may not have ever run. So the trick here is that you create the server one time, and you can do it by following the wizard when you created that first project. So you get the first project, but then you also get the web servers folder, and you just leave the web server folder alone, and you can use it with any new project. Like I can use it with this project, or I can use it with this project. Okay. The problem though is when you first start out, you don't get anything. So if I try to run this project, let me just run real quick. I'll show you what's going to happen. You get a little dialog that comes up. I just selected run on the project, but there's nothing in the project. And so let me show you the little dialog that comes up. A little dialog looks like that. And then you're going to say run on server. You always want to run a web project on the server. You can't run it as a standalone Java application. So if I select run on server and I press OK, I get another screen. Let me see if I can show you this screen. It's a little difficult to actually keep going back and forth. But I have a little screen here. It says, select which server to use. And you can still manually select one, or you can highlight the one that's in the box here that was created, the Tomcat 9 at localhost, that's stopped. And so you can also press this little button down here that says, always use the server when running this project. If I do that, then I don't have to select it again. It'll automatically run it on that server. If I click next, it's just, these are basically the two projects that I had. You don't really have to do even the next. You can just select finish. And here I have the output, but let me show you the output real quick. The output doesn't look too good. The output looks like HTTP status 404 not found. Because unfortunately, they give you a project that is completely empty. So we have to put a JSP file in the project. It's completely empty. So it does, if you try to run a blank project, it gives you an error. It says the requested resource, hello, is not available. The origin server did not find any current representation of a target resource and is not willing to disclose that one exists. Yeah, for security reasons. And this also, a note to self here, it brought up a window. And the window that it brought up was my Firefox window. And my Firefox window is now running localhost :8080 hello world. So it's running on my local host and it is hello world, but I'm not really running anything right now because I don't have anything in the project. So let me briefly show you one more trick here before we break. And then I go back. Let's just let's see if I can bring up the preferences. So let me stop the share and show you this preference. So what I did here is I'm bringing up, I went into Eclipse and I went into the preferences window. So it's in the drop down, the main Eclipse folder, and it's called preferences. And the reason why I'm getting my Firefox browser to show up is because in the general, if you click on the top one that says general, and you go all the way down to web browser, I switched it from using my internal web browser to using an external web browser, and it's compatible with Firefox. So I clicked on Firefox instead of the default system web browser, which would be Safari. And I'm running Mojave on this, and the Safari browser is very problematic. In fact, it's going to bring up an error message, and let me show you what this looks like, because if you're on a Windows computer, you may also experience this as well. So I'm temporarily switching this to using using the internal web browser, which is the default. So I'm going to click on apply and close. And now I'm going to go back and run this project one more time and show you what's going to happen. So I'm just clicked on hello world, and I'm just going to run it, run on the server. And let me show you this little dialog that's come up. Let's see if I can get that dialog shared. Here it is. I get this little dialog. This is a very, 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 very common issue with modern day operating systems and Eclipse. So it says that tried to run it on localhost, and it's running, and by default, Eclipse is running HTTP, which is not secure. HTTPS is the secured form. Windows 10, Mojave, Catalina, actually all of the more common, Big Sur, all of the common current Mac versions require HTTPS secured. So the page will fail to load the resource because of this thing called an app transport security policy that requires use of a secure connection. Funny thing though, is that if you use the external browser, the Firefox browser, or a Chrome browser, or something outside of Eclipse, it works just fine. So if you get this little security warning when you try and run the app, and we're not even running a page yet, nothing is even loaded. It won't even load it because the internal Eclipse browser, which is, I don't even know what kind of browser that is really, doesn't support HTTPS is what the problem is. So if you go on the internet, this is the weirdest thing, and I've been meaning to post something out there because these guys are just idiots. You see it with Xcode issues, you see it with Windows problems. And really, it's just people don't understand what's going on. And what they don't understand is the Eclipse internal web browser is not full featured. It doesn't support secure connections. And most modern computers have security running. So the way that you get around that problem is that you go in and you use an external browser instead of the internal one by clicking on, and I'm clicking on Eclipse preferences. Oops, let me put this back here. And I'm changing the preferences to use my external browser. So I'm going into the general, I'm opening up general right there at the top, and I'm going down to web browser, and I'm going to click on use the external web browser. And I'm going to use Firefox. It just happens to show up in my window, and I'm going to click on apply and close. And so now when I run my project, it will open up my external web browser and not try to use that internal web browser. If you try to use that internal web browser, 99.9% of the time, you're going to have an issue. So the web browser is not going to show up in my Eclipse. It's going to show up outside of Eclipse. It's going to be my Firefox browser. You can use any browser that you want. I highly recommend Firefox because it's extremely compatible with Eclipse. Okay. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to take a break because it's 9:07. We're going to take a, how much time do you guys want? To 9:20? That's pretty good because some of you are probably downloading, maybe you're downloading and installing Eclipse. So we will meet back. We will take a break and restart at 9:20. I will open up at 9:20 with questions just in case you guys are, I don't know how fast your internet speeds are, but if you want to try to download, you want to try to start, you want to try and get your systems configured, and you run into some problems in the next 15 minutes or so while you're taking your break. If you come up with something, yes, my Eclipse still has like 2 hours. 2 hours? Wow. Okay, go take a break. Take a break. This is your break. I don't want to waste your time on your break. Oh, sorry about the 2 hours. Eclipse shouldn't take 2 hours to download. It might be because, Chris, it might be because you're connected to Zoom and your bandwidth is probably being consumed by me yakking. So, all right, take a break. Take a break. Okay, I'm back. Can you guys hear me? Anybody?
Yeah.
Okay, great, thanks. All right. So let's see. Hello world. So I put together a little sample, but I want to show you manually though how to run this. The other thing I wanted to put out there is that it's taking a long time for you to download and install. No worries. If you do run into a question while you're doing the install, I would say just try to plow through it. If you run into a situation where you can't solve it, you can always send me an email message as well. And the other thing I was going to put out there, and I don't know if you really want to do this or not, but I have another class meeting on Wednesdays at 8 o'clock in the morning again. And you guys should still, at the beginning of the semester, I sent you guys a link to both the Tuesday as well as the Wednesday. If you want to see it again, you can watch the video. If you want to see it again and you want to ask a question, you can always attend tomorrow if you wanted to as well. I'm not going to notice if someone from the Tuesday section is in the Wednesday. Just, it depends on your time and availability, but you might just also be able just to watch the recording from today. And that might do the trick for you as well. Or, the other thing too is go out to YouTube. There's a million videos on how to set it up, how to use it. And my way might be the fast way. Some of the videos might show you a slower way, but maybe you might learn from a slower versus a faster approach. Who knows? So feel free to use whatever means and resources that are available to you to get your system set up. And I make it look a little easy. You might run into some complications when running it. Who knows? I find it runs really flawlessly on a Mac, and on a Windows computer, it's a little problematic at times. So you might benefit from troubleshooting. Hopefully you won't have to do too much troubleshooting. But let's work with Hello World. So I've got a project called Hello World that I just created. It's an empty project, it has nothing in it. So what I'm going to do is add a JSP file to it. And so the easiest way to do this, and this is the identical situation that you have on a Mac versus a PC. Everything, the entire Eclipse program is identical. So this works identically. So I just highlight the project. If you open it up, you can kind of see what the project looks like. The source code folder is going to have a main, and then it's going to have a Java, and then a web app. And then down here, you're going to have some subfolders that are part of that. But don't concern yourself with it. Instead, just click on the project, go up to File, New, and I'm not quite sure how to show this one, but I'm selecting JSP file. Let's see. I don't think these dialogues are showing.
We can see that.
Yeah.
Oh, you can see the dialogue. Perfect.
Yeah.
So there's a couple options you have here. You could click on Other on the bottom, or you could just click on this last one. It says JSP file. So you can see what you got here. You have CSS files. So this first box, just to show you what this is, the first box is the project types. So for this class, you're always going to select Dynamic Web Project. You might take another class and maybe do a Maven, or maybe even an Enterprise if you take another class. But we're just going to use Dynamic Web Project. You can even use an Enterprise Java Bean inside of there too. So Dynamic Web Project, the only thing you have to worry about here. Now the second little box here, you see it's kind of divided out, are the different files that you can add to the projects. So you can put a CSS file, a JavaScript file, a servlet, which servlets we'll do next week. Session bean, message beans, all sorts of beans, folders, files. But we want this JSP file. So I'm going to select the JSP file. And now I think I have to switch the share over. I do. Create a new JSP file. Leave it in its default folder. It needs to go into web app because it's a web application folder. So this is actually showing you what I just showed you a few minutes ago with the web folder, with the project folders as I exploded it. And leave it on its default location. Well, let's change the name. I'm going to call this, I'm just going to say my hello.jsp. Now you could just click finish, but I just want to show you what these other options are. It's going to allow you to change the language from HTML4 to 5. You just want to leave it on the 5, or you can also switch it to XHTML compatible, which I briefly mentioned last week as XML plus HTML. But I would just leave it on 5, and it's going to preview. This is the document that's going to show up this is the top of the header of the file. Leave it all alone. And if you don't want to worry yourselves with that, just click on finish. When you click on finish, it will bring up, and this is my window here, my hello.jsp. Okay, so what you're looking at is the first JSP tag up here. And it is basically, the tagging system is very similar to HTML, and I have a JSP.ppt file I'm going to show you at the end here. This is required because it is a JSP file. This header, I called it a header at the top. I'm probably going to take my line numbers off, but you can change. Your screen might not look exactly like mine. I've kind of disabled a few things. But this here is the HTML part of the document. And up here is the header that says, hey, I'm a JSP file. So right now what I want to do is just, and this is the title that shows up in the bar in the tab. So I'm going to put a title. This is basically the HTML code we've seen from day one. So I'm going to go with my first JSP file. And in the body, I'm just going to put something in here, like I'll make it bold. And you see, if you put tags in here, you have the opening and closing that happens automatically for you. So some people actually started, I had a couple of students who actually started doing their web development in Eclipse just from day one. So now you know that you could actually, if you wanted to develop HTML files in Eclipse as well, it's kind of overkill for that. You don't have to use a text editor. You could just use Eclipse for it and just do it this way. Because you could add an HTML file as well, not even a JSP file. But I'm going to put something in bold, and here I'll put in a font color. I'm just going to do a manual style and have it equal to red. And see, you have the opening and closing font that happened for you automatically. So it'll type stuff in for you. Hello, I made it here. So then what I normally do, and I just put a sentence in there so I could see something appear. I'm going to save it, and then I'm going to run it again. So I saved it, and now I'm just going to go back up to the menu and hit run, just like I did before. Or you could do run on a server. And then, oh, I have to change the, hold on, let me change the share to my Firefox. And then now you can see the tab says my first JSP file up here, and it's running localhost 8080 hello world myfile.jsp. And in the body, I see hello, I made it here in red. So that is the window that popped up when I hit run on server. And so it's actually running on the server now on my local host. So I have a full Apache Tomcat server that runs, you know, HTML, JSP, servlets. It runs everything actually right now. It will not run PHP. PHP still needs to have PHP installed on it. You would still need to use XAMPP for PHP. This is just gonna be for Java and for JSP. So now I'm gonna switch back to this window here. And actually, let's see, I'm gonna go back to the classroom here and show you a couple of things here that I preloaded for you. I know I'm not sharing anything yet. Going back to the classroom for a moment to show you in the Zoom video conference section under today's lecture, which is 622 Zoom recording. which is not available yet, obviously. I have two files. I have first.jsp, and when you open it, you'll be able to download first.jsp, and then there's jsp.ppt. So these are the two files we're using today. So if you want to download those, you'll see the code that I'm going to show you in a moment here. So first.jsp is what I'm looking at right now. If I open up first.jsp, let's just open it up here. And I will show you. The file looks like this. Now, what I'm going to do is cut and paste this and stick it in the JSP file. Actually, I have it in another JSP file. I can just show you. But this is what JSP code looks like. And a few minutes ago, I showed you Java HTML code. So I'm still in the body section here. And I've got these opening and these closing tags that come in sets that are going to show you how you're writing Java code inside of PHP. And so the Java code, it looks very similar to C++ code. This is what I was trying to say in the beginning. If you're not a Java programmer, you really are, you just don't know it yet, because the syntax is practically identical. But there's differences here in that it's very similar to PHP. And the reason why we looked at PHP first is because PHP is one of those languages where you can write PHP code, mix it in with HTML code and vice versa, which is what we're doing here. And PHP uses the question mark with the opening, like this kind of here with a question mark. And these guys are using slightly different variations of the same tag. There's actually 5 different versions of it. This one has, and I'm going to do that in a PowerPoint for you. This one has a tag with an equal sign. We have a tag with nothing. We have a tag with an at directive. And they're used for different purposes. So there's not just one tagging system, there's a variation of them. So that's what the file looks like. I want to go back to Eclipse and show you what you could do with that file. So I preloaded it over here just to kind of save time. And once you create the file, it's in the web app folder and it shows up down here. So this is that file, but I added the directive at the top. So I guess there's 2 HTMLs. Oops, get rid of this. What is this? I don't know what that was. This line is actually not needed because there's 2 document types, HTML, but actually this one's not needed. I can take that one out. But now we're gonna have a mismatch. Here, let me take this one out. I'll close the HTML. But long story short, we can, what does that message say? Let's see. Invalid location of tag head. Yeah. Now I'll put the HTML back just in case I needed it. I don't think I needed it. Anyway, long story short, yeah, I think I did need it in here. I left the top the same and I just pasted in the code here. So you can see the code. In fact, if you want, you can just take the body section of that file and paste it into the body section. So watch this, edit copy. So we don't have to use this actually. We can just take that file that we were looking at a few minutes ago. And I'm gonna shut this one so I don't confuse it. Save. So the body section is what I'm changing here. So instead of putting that in, actually I could just leave that in there, put that in there, but then at the top, edit paste. There we go. So in the body section, I have the, well, I have 2 body sections. Let's take this one out. Don't need that one. There we go. All right. So I have that font, hello, I made it here. And then I'm going to run some JSP code. This JSP code here is taking a double num, and it's going to be equal to map.random. Looks like C++. It's the same. If number is larger than 0.95, then we're going to print to the screen. You'll have a lucky day. And then what it's going to print out then next to it is the number. So it's going to print the number out. And let's just go here for a second. Let's make this, I'm just making it a little bigger for me. So you'll have a lucky day. And then you see that we have HTML code that's kind of color coded in kind of a cyanish green color. And then we're using JavaScript, excuse me, JS here, JSP here, to put the number in. So this number is this number here, this variable. And this is how what we're using to print out the value of the number. Else, well, life goes on, and then it prints the number out. So we're looking for a number that's larger than 0.95. And then we're going to put an H reference down in the bottom here, where we're going to request a get request URI, which is basically going to run it again. And it's going to put try again there. So we're going to see a little link. So if we run it, and let me make sure I save this here. I'm going to run this to show you what it looks like. And then let's switch the share over. There we go. So I still have the hello, I made it. Well, life goes on, ... And here's the number here that we got. It was 0.25. So if I hit try again, I get 0.18, 0.6. I have to get something larger than 9.5. Is that what it is? Oh, there it is. Oh, 9.8. Okay, there it is. You'll have a lucky day. So every time I hit this, it's basically loading up the page again to rerun the code. So it runs very similar to PHP in that the code is generated when the page is rendered and the output is showing up on the screen, but we are running it from the server, which means if we rerun the JSP, it gets recompiled with the new information, which is going to be math.random, that's going to generate another number for us. And then when we hit try again, oh, wow, that's lucky. You're going to see the output change with the different tries of the different random. So there we go. We got back to 0.95. And so you can sort of see how you can create a more interactive website, and it does the same behavior as the PHP file does. You have to rerun the PHP file in order to generate a new random. If I wrote this thing in PHP, which is really easy to do actually, you'd also have to refresh it each time to get a new output to show up on the screen. So before you begin programming assignment number 4, I would see if this example, you can get this example to work and to get your output to refresh and to get your environment set up. That would be the first step that I would take if I were you. Because at least you know that the environment's working. So I put that kind of out there. All you have to do is load the body of that example into the body section of any file, of any JSP file. Now, noticing you can also add HTML files and you can add a bunch of other stuff. But to run it, you just click on Hello World and you can just click on Run, or the name of the project. And so it's fairly easy to run in Eclipse, fairly easy to use once you get the environment set up. So at this point, I'm going to switch away from Eclipse and I'm going to go to the PowerPoint and show you a few things about JSP and how to write these tags. And so I want to take one last moment for any questions that you guys might have about Eclipse at this point before I switch it back over to the PowerPoint. Nope. Then I'm going to switch it to the PowerPoint. Let's see, load the PowerPoint. There it is. New share PowerPoint. So this is the JSP.ppt PowerPoint. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I do want to kind of show you a few things that are important so you know what's going on here. So the topics, as you can see, are the fundamentals, scripting elements, the way things are working. So JSP pages are HTML pages embedded with snippets of Java code. The Java code that you're writing, and most people, immediately go, Java, I don't know Java. It's Java syntax is identical to C++ syntax, and we're not using any of the object-oriented features. It technically is Java, and yes, you are running Java code, but you already know how to program in Java if you've programmed in C or C++ before. The syntax is identical. And we're not creating class objects. We're just using the syntax of Java and the power of a real programming language instead of JavaScript. So not to be confused, JSP stands for Java Servlet pages. It's not .js, which is JavaScript. JavaScript is a totally different language. It's a scripting language. JSP is a scripting version of Java. So we have scripting elements. We have object directions, actions. None of this, by the way, is on the midterm exam. This is after the midterm. So your servlet pages, your JSP, runs in two phases. There's a translation phase, and then there's an execution phase. Very similar to the way that PHP runs. In the transition page, it's compiled into the servlet, and then you call the JSP page, and then it implements the class for you and runs the class object. In the execution phase, the compiled JSP is processed. All right, so here's where most of the confusion comes into place. JSP is a servlet. Servlets are servlets. The only thing different between JSP and servlets is that one is compiled before it's run, the other one is pre-compiled. So you can run objects in these two different modalities. What you're looking at is the one that needs to be compiled before it runs. Okay, so that JSP code that we saw in that example with the random number that we just looked at, that code is compiled and then it's run, just like Java is compiled before it's run. We can write that same code in what we call a servlet, which is a .class file, a .java file that turns into a .class file that compiles. And then once we compile it one time, and then that one compilation is run over and over and over again. It's called a servlet because it's served up. It's a small little thing that's served up to all of these client requests that come into the server that request the object. JSP isn't served up that way. It takes dynamic input from the user. In this case, it's just a random that's running. And then the content's generated, and then it's produced as output every time the page loads. So what we were doing with that random is clicking on the refresh, which was refreshing the page and recompiling the page so that we could benefit from the new number that was being randomly generated from that page. Okay, so we have three different types of scripting elements. And basically that's what I want to cover today. Just go through the scripting elements. I know this is a lot for we definitely ramped it up a little bit in terms of the content. And if this is brand new to you, don't worry about it. You'll catch on, and you might want to go through this PowerPoint at a slower pace. So we have declarations, scriptlets, and expressions. And they're used, sometimes you can get away with just one. You don't have to use all of them. They're scripting elements. And I kind of sort of put that out to you. There are also compiler directives where you've got the @ symbol as well, but we'll just look at them. And what we're looking at here with these three basic types of scripting elements, these are the differences in the tags. All of the tags start out with a opening. Here, I got it highlighted. Hopefully you can see that. The bracket that looks like the PHP bracket, but then we have the %sign. And then the start tag could have an exclamation point, it could have an equal sign, or it can have an @ symbol, or it can have nothing at all. The second symbol determines the type of tag that we have. This one here is a declaration tag. So it's used to define methods and instance variables. It doesn't produce any output to the client. So you just embed it. So like, for example, you were to create a bunch of variables, you could use this directive tag. So the functions and variables defined are available to the JSP page as well as to the servlet in which it is compiled. So the scope is global for everything. Anything and everything you put in here is available to all of the other tags and all of the other things. So a lot of people will use this. For example, here's like public void JSP destroy, which is a method. A little different than, actually, this looks like C++ to me. Public void is plant. This is, well, we have our public, private, and protected that shows up at the beginning, a little bit different with Java. Most methods are public, and you can actually leave the public out, and this would still compile just fine. So you can write methods just like you write them in C++. And the syntax is very similar. But we have the opening bracket here, which is what I'm showing you, the declaration, excuse me. And then we have the closing bracket. The closing brackets always look the same. They're just the % with the closing bracket. So if you can get through that concept, you've got JSP. It's pretty easy. All right. Then we have the basic scriptlet. This has got nothing. So you use the embedded Java code in JSP pages. The content of the JSP goes into the JSP servlet method. The code should comply with syntax and semantics of Java, which is, again, like almost identical to C++. We have the embedded opening and closing brackets. Most people would just use these. In fact, that's what I'm using in the example. We're just using this tag set here. Oh, actually, it's using the equals as well, but this is the tag set. And so we have opening, we have our Java code, we have our closing. So you're saying on the previous slide here, it said this is for declarations. These are declarations. Integer x is equal to 5. That's an assignment and a declaration all in one. It means you don't have to put in this exclamation point. You can just leave it blank. So the tags are very forgiving. Lots of people just use this here, this one, and they don't bother with the other variations that you have, but it depends on what you're trying to do. We also have this one here for expressions, and expressions has the equals next to it, and the equals print something to the screen. So we used this one in the example I just showed you a few minutes ago. It runs the toString for you. So if the output is an element, then the result of calling the toString on the object is the output to the browser. You use the equals to output information to the web browser, basically. And so here we have Fred, which is going to output plus Flintstone. It's concatenation. This is going to print out Fred Flintstone to the web browser. Or this is going to print out math square root of 100. So it prints out 10 to the web browser. So if you want the output to go to the web browser, then you're going to use the equals. And then, in fact, I want to bring up Eclipse. Oh, Eclipse is still up. I'm going to go back real quick here to show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so this one here is the compiler directive. Normally, you won't use the compiler directive, and that's the @ symbol. So the symbol looks like that. There's a little @ that goes next to it, but you can't put a space. It's all in one. The closing brackets like that. So this one's saying that the page language is equal to Java, the content type is equal to text, HTML, a character set, and you can actually leave out all of these parameters if you want. Page encoding is UTF-8. It's just basically, and then we have the closing. So this is talking to the compiler saying, hey, we're going to use Java in here. And that usually shows up at the top of the page. In fact, this one here, you can take out this meta tag. You don't need the meta tag in there either. Some browsers require that the text encoding be specified, especially if the browser is not on like a standard x86 architecture, like if it's on, like a different type of processor. Sometimes it supports different character sets and you have to specify it. But in this particular case, it's kind of overkill. But the template gave it The Eclipse template gave it to us. None of this stuff we wrote ourselves. The template gave it to us. So we just kind of kept it. I just kept it in there. But see, here we have the opening and the closing bracket, and we have the Java code in between. And so this is just HTML code. We could stick JavaScript code in here too if we wanted. But we don't have to use the opening and closing. When we want to write Java code, then we use the opening and closing scriptlet tags. And then here, we've put the opening and closing scriptlet tags inside of HTML code. This is where we've got the equal sign with the number that was generated. And we have a paragraph return in here, which is why it's showing up on a different line. The P's in there. So that, yeah, for both guesses. And then down here, we're running a regular old hyperreference, but the hyperreference we're running is going to be a request.get request URI, which is the same page. And so, and it's going to print it to the screen. And when it's going to print to the screen, a rendering of the same page. So it's going to ask the page to try again. Well, it's going to print try again to the screen. When you press on that, the anchor is going to request the same URI to run again. So it's a universal resource locator. It's a URL. The URI is the initial page. So it's the page request that we're doing. So just take that with a grain of salt. It's a little advanced actually for this lecture, but it's something that you'll just get used to. You'll have to run the page again sometimes or call a different page. The concept is the same as when you were learning JavaScript. But this anchor is a web anchor, just like the ones you write your links if you've ever done a link in a page before. So that's the code in context. And it's a lot to absorb. So take it in baby steps. So I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint real quick and kind of just finish up the concepts here. So that's the equals. And then so we have the scope. The scope is global. So implicit objects provide access to server-side objects. So what I didn't mention before was that the JSP page that's running on the server has access to everything that's on the server. So when we run it, we're running it on localhost. Here, actually, let me go back to the. We're running it on localhost. And so what we'll end up doing, and we'll do it next week, I'll show you next week, in the source main Java folder, which has nothing in it right now, we'll add a .java file. And that .java file will be a servlet. So actually, I can just show you how to do it now if you want. So I'm going to click on Hello World, and I'm going to get rid of this little page here. Sure, save it. Okay. And then I'm going to go File, New. This time I'm going to select Servlet. So I'm just going to demo the Servlet functionality to you right now. So new, and these are the two things we're going to be doing. So the first thing we just did was Java, the JSP file. Next, I'm going to demo this thing called a servlet. So I'm going to click on servlet, and then I'm going to need to fix the share for you real quick here. Then you get another, so create a servlet, and the servlet is going to be in source main Java. And I'm going to leave the package empty so it just does the default package. And instead, I'm going to say hello servlet. So now I have a servlet called hello servlet. And it's going to give me my class name of hello servlet. And I'm not going to use an existing servlet class or JSP. It's going to be inherited, just like C++. If you don't know Java, don't stress too much, but it's going to be inherited from, and I'll talk about the architecture of this in a moment, Java X servlet.html. So, and then I'm just going to go next. And there's nothing in here really that I need to do. I'm just going to, I can have constructors. I can inherit from abstract methods. I want the do post to be in there and the do get. So I'm just going to click on finish so we sort of see what this looks like. And let me go back to the share and go back to here. So now I have this thing called a hello servlet.java. And so now I have a .java file here. It says .java and not .js. So not JSP. So you can see down here, I still have hello.jsp. And I like to close the files that are on the right-hand side of Eclipse so I don't confuse them. But if I go back and I look for this one's going to be now in the default package here. And remember before it was empty, but now it says hello servlet.java, which is this file. So this one is like a C++ class, or like a Java class, actually. In Java, for those people who are not familiar, you'll learn a little bit about Java when you start looking at the servlets, because you'll see the architecture of how a Java program works. So hello servlet.java turns into hello servlet.class when it's compiled. And so I would just leave the template alone, but you can see we have a public class hello servlet that extends, and this is inheritance. It extends HTTP servlet. So this one is just a version number that gets put into the template that I would just leave alone. But we have methods in here. We have a constructor, public hello servlet, and it's going to run super. That's how we run the supers constructor from inheritance. And then we have these methods. We have two methods. One's called a do get, and the other one's called a do post. And they're automatic. You only have to use one or the other. You don't have to use both. But this is synonymous with the HTTP get and post that we have on forms. And so when we do the do get and we do the do post, depending upon what we're running, here we're just gonna get the request and we're gonna respond. And so if I run this guy, let's just see what happens when I run it. I also have to run it on the server. And oops, my menu is like messed up. Run on the server. Oh, I don't have anything in here and I'm not running it. So let's just stop this. Hold on a second. I'm gonna click on the servlet itself. I can't run it from a project level because it really isn't, I have nothing calling it. So I'm gonna click on the hello servlet.java, and then I'm gonna do a run as on that, run on the server. And I'm gonna get a message here that it's not available. The origin servers did not find it. Okay, we're gonna have a little problem with that one. Because it's not configured yet, it's not set up. So next week, what we'll do, I didn't show you the output page because it's going to generate another error. But let's just save it real quick here, actually. It is saved. Interesting. And we're going to have a problem with it. All right, so we're going to leave that one for next week because I need to write some functionality in here and I need to call the servlet page. So usually what ends up happening is we have a JSP file that calls, there's no functionality. It's the same problem we had when I first started with the project. There's just nothing built. So if you run it right now, if there's a problem with the servlet, I'll show you the page actually, just so you, well, it's the same page we saw before. It's going to give us an HTTP error because we don't have anything in here. There's nothing in here. So what I'm going to do next week for you, because I don't want to overkill to this week's, is show you how to run the servlet. But generally speaking, we would run a starter page, like an HTML page or a JSP page, and then we would click a button. The button would run the servlet object. We don't normally start out running the servlets instantly. We can make the servlet run, but we don't necessarily we don't want to start out with a run. So it's okay. So the reason why this follows a model view controller architecture where the JSP and the HTML files are the user interface, AKA the view. That's the V of the model view. And then we have the backend logic. This is more of the data. which is going to be the data model, the model view. So the way that the architecture runs, and I'll go through this next week actually, is that it runs in these components that we have. And we usually mix the controller with the view. So, and it originally started out with HTML was the view, JSP was the controller, and the .java was the model. But it's loosely interpreted in terms of this model view controller. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, Google MVC or model view controller and JSP, and you can read all about how the different components of the project fit into these three categories. And so if you are familiar with that, then you would design the app, the application that you're running on the web to have these three components. And so they all work together in this nice synergy that goes on. We don't have that synergy yet because I didn't create more than just a blank server. And I don't have a JSP page calling the server. So we don't actually have that going on. If you watch the video that I put together, I kind of go through that a little bit as well in the assignment. We will do that next week. So just to finish up here on the PowerPoint, the Java implicit objects, and if you go through some of the other things, you'll look about the response and the request that happens. And then you'll see some Java code in the JSP code in the example here, and the deployment and the run. Okay, so this is a bit tedious and kind of long and drawn out, so I will leave this for you. But there's that page directive that I was talking about with the app symbol. We will probably, you're not going to go this far. What you're getting is, just like we did PHP, you just are going to use some basic functionality. You're also going to use some basic functionality in JSP because there's no assumption that you know how to program in Java. So you'll learn a little bit about Java if you don't know it already. But I really don't think we're going to create a servlet that will actually use an at directive. But the at directive is a compile. They call it a compiler directive that talks to the compiler, like include this, set the package to that, set the language to this kind of thing. So this lecture does cover the at directive as well. And you'll see some actions in here, forward actions, back actions. And you'll see how the architecture works together. In fact, here's the loan calculator example that shows you the model view. So you have the index.jsp that calls the controller.jsp that goes to the servers. So you have a compound or you have a simple interest computation. And then it might generate a new, so you can generate a JSP page from a JSP page. So if you take a look at this loan example, you'll see the code for it and you'll see the pieces. I don't know if I would try it. I would try the ones that are on the Borg website. They might actually be a little easier for you. And next week, I'm going to go through servlet examples, but I don't want to overkill you on new information this week. So, in fact, I think I'm going to stop at this point because some of you are probably already overwhelmed. So take it slowly, work on your install first. If you have problems with your install, send me an email message. I can try and troubleshoot your issue. It's good troubleshooting experience to set up your environment. You should be able to get it working, granted, after you've been able to download the files. So go ahead and take a look, get your environment set up, and then next week, I'm going to run through servlet examples. All the servlet examples and things that are on my website are there for you to use to help you learn the material. It's really overkill. I would watch the video that I have in the materials about the assignment that will walk you through the assignment. So I'm going to stop momentarily for some questions. If we don't have any questions, then I'm going to conclude today's meeting. If you don't have any questions, then I will see you next week. Make sure that you plan on taking the midterm exam sometime before the 4th of July. You have 2 weeks. You have this week and you have all the next week to take it. But I would do assignments number 1, 2, and 3 before taking the midterm, because you'll score better, because you will be more familiar with the concepts. All right, on that note, I'm signing off unless we have questions. So see you guys next week. No questions. Great. Thanks, Nicholas. See you guys next week. Have a good weekend. No cues. Then see you next week. If you don't have any questions, I will see you next week. If you do have questions, hang out. I can answer your questions. No questions. Kai Don, question? Canver, questions? Canver? Now I know who's here and who's not. Who's logged in? Nope. Okay, good. No problem. Sometimes you don't have a mic. Nope. Okay, good. Perfect. All right. Well, then I will see you guys next week. Have a great rest of your week. I hope it's not going to be as hot this week as it was last week, but I guess we'll see. Have a great weekend. Bye.